On the radar with the CBS 17 Storm Team.
Welcome to On the Radar, your weekly look at our weather world exclusively here on CBS 17 Plus. I'm Wes Hohenstein.
I'm meteorologist Rachel Duensing. Welcome in, everyone. We have a lot that's going on. We're going to talk about Hurricane Preparedness Week and take a look at some of the very important Hurricane Hunter aircraft, but not quite hurricane season yet. We've had to deal with tornadoes as well. We're going to chat with meteorologist Laura Smith about a very earlier morning than usual, I should say, that she had to deal with this past week.
Yeah, May, the busiest tornado month of our year here in North Carolina, and it's holding true, unfortunately. So we'll jump into that a little later. We're also going to talk about migration. This is a little outside the meteorology world, but definitely a science-related topic, not only bird migration, but alligator migration. I don't think something any of us want to deal with, alligators.
Yeah, probably not. And then we always like to do a little history, a little fun fact. We're going to go back in time. And yes, of course, it's Wes and I. We're going to talk a little bit about some space history. So it should be some really fun stuff, Wes. But we want to start in Florida.
Yeah, let's start it off with just days away from the official start of the Atlantic hurricane season. We have started to get more and more outlooks for the upcoming season, and we're starting to get more and more in depth into what our season will look like. But one of the most important tools that we use every year, Rachel, unfortunately not that we use, are the Hurricane Hunter aircraft. I don't think either of us have ever gotten to fly in one. I don't know that either of us wants to.
I want to.
You do? Okay.
Oh, hands down.
Okay. So we're going to go behind the scenes with the Hurricane Hunters down in Florida. Just outside of Tampa, in Lakeland, Florida, is the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center. And we had our friends down at WFLA, the NBC station down in Tampa, Florida, help us out with this one. Amanda Holly, one of the longtime meteorologists down there, hurricane expert, she got to go behind the scenes, not only with the aircraft, but also with one of our favorite social media follows, Nick Underwood. I want you to write that down. Remember that. Nick Underwood works with NOAA. He also is very active on social media when he is flying in the Hurricane Hunter. So let's check in with Amanda and Nick down at the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center.
We're here at the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center in Lakeland, Florida, home of the Hurricane Hunters, and here with Nick Underwood, aerospace engineer. Thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, absolutely.
And tell me a little bit about what we got going on behind us.
Yeah, so this is Kermit. This is one of our two WP-3D Orions. So Kermit rolled off the assembly line in 1975 and started flying storms the next year. And so over 100 hurricanes that this aircraft has been through. There's multiple radar systems on board. There's one in the nose. There's a radar system in that big M&M looking fairing on the bottom of the airplane. That's our multi-mode radar. So that one scans out at about at a distance about 300 miles. And so as we're flying into the storm, we can use that picture to give us an idea of the storm structure, really kind of what we're getting into, and then plan our attack to go in from there. 4 propeller engines, plenty of horsepower to keep us going, even in the strongest winds. Out here on the wing, this pylon normally has some laser instruments inside of it that are cloud physics probes, and they'll sample water droplet size, speed, and direction. They're currently still being calibrated in the lab, so we haven't installed them for the season yet, but they'll be on there soon enough. As we come around this way, along the bottom of the aircraft, we've got a lot of different instrument ports where we'll mount things like LiDARs, other radar systems, things that measure significant wave heights, wave speeds, ocean sea surface temperatures. There's also a lot of chutes or tubes along the bottom of the aircraft. That's where we'll launch instruments like dropsondes, drones, ocean drifting buoys, all different kinds of things to collect as much data as we can. And then most importantly, on the tail of the aircraft, in that big bulb back there, is our tail Doppler radar. And so that system has two dishes in it. One looks forward, one looks aft. And as we're flying through the storm, they're scanning vertically from the sea surface up to the tops of the clouds. And so it's sort of like taking a CAT scan of the storm. And so the researchers, the scientists, can push all that data back together at the end of it and get a good, clear picture of how the storm is developing and how it's strengthening.
And so you guys work as a team specifically, but as an engineer, what is your job on the plane?
Typically my job on the aircraft is to sit in the back and launch dropsondes, drones, whatever other expendables are required for that particular mission.
And what's your favorite part?
Really, it's just the team that we get to work with. Everyone here, the pilots, the flight directors, the engineers, the technicians, everyone has so much skill and so much knowledge, and it's really incredible to see all of that come together and allow us to do this effectively and safely.
And why do you fly into hurricanes? Why did you choose to do this?
I enjoy public service, and I like the impact that the mission really has. The data that we're collecting feeds the forecast models that predict where the storm's going to go and how strong they're going to get. And the better job we can do up in the air, the more accurate those predictions will be, and the earlier we can give people a warning that a storm's coming their way.
That's the whole goal, right?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you so much for being here, Nick. Thank you.
Right.
Appreciate for the work that you do as well.
All right, thank you.
All right, well, that is it from behind the scenes here at the NOAA Aircraft Operations Center in Lakeland, Florida. In Florida, I'm Amanda Holly.
All right, Amanda, good stuff. Her and Nick. So I don't know if a lot of us know Nick, but we know some video he posted last year. So like he said, he's generally on the planes that fly directly into the hurricane. Well, he posted a video last year that many of you saw. It made the rounds on social media and even the evening news. And it was a little bit of a bumpy flight. That's because they were flying into Hurricane Milton, Rachel, when it had 155-mile-per-hour winds.
I think he had one that went viral as well with Hurricane Ian a couple of years ago, and that was another one where it knocked everything off the racks. They had to throw a few bleeps in there because of all the expressions that were happening. But yeah, they do really great work. It can be a little treacherous at times, but we are so grateful for not just the folks at NOAA, but there's also an additional fleet, so to speak, that is with the United States Air Force as well. They both work in tandem. They're both flying constantly into these storms, a great partnership. So like Nick said, we're able to get that really valuable information that can go into weather models and keep all of us safe as we prepare for hurricane season.
Yeah, the more information we can gather in the current state of the hurricane, the better we can do at forecasting where it's going to go next. If you want to follow Nick on social media, he's the Tropic Nick. That's Nick Underwood and Amanda Holly. You can also follow her. Again, our thanks to our friends down at WFLA in Florida for that.
Sure. And speaking of hurricane season and hurricane preparedness, we know that, a little bit more inland here in central North Carolina, we don't have to deal with the same impacts that folks on the coast do, but now is the time to be prepared. We always say be prepared now in the event that you have to deal with a tropical storm or a hurricane. So we just kind of want to run through some things really quickly about what you need to do before hurricane season. And one of those is if you live in either a flood prone area or an area that is called to be evacuated, you have to think of your evacuation plan right now. In the moment, you can kind of be panicked. You may not know where you're supposed to go, but if you calmly think about it now before you have to do it, you can plan out a route. You can know where you have to go. And remember, you don't have to go far. You just have to get away from the storm surge. You have to get away from the flooding. So even if that only means, traveling 30 minutes inland,
right,
that's all you need to do sometimes. But also make sure you assemble those really important supplies as well.
Yeah, and most of us here in central North Carolina will never evacuate during a hurricane. That's mainly for people along the coast. What we mainly have to deal with here, a tornado threat and prolonged power outages. So think ahead. What would you need to survive something like that? Obviously know where your safe place is to go in a tornado and be ready to deal with power maybe for 30 minutes or maybe for several hours to be without power for that long. Those are the two biggest problems we typically get here in central North Carolina when a hurricane hits.
Yeah, and another thing that we want to make sure that we are talking about as well, if we can get the graphics to advance here. Here we go, the forecast cone. The forecast cone I feel like always gets misunderstood, might be a good word to say that. People think the forecast cone is where the worst of the weather is going to be, but that is not the case. The cone is literally just where a forecast for where the center of the storm will go. And so what the National Hurricane Center is doing now, and you can kind of see it on the graphic here, they are now starting to add those inland watches and warnings on the forecast cone. So that way we have a much better idea of, okay, you're outside that forecast cone, but what kind of impacts could I have? Because it's a forecast cone, not an impact cone, Wes.
Yeah, and every year the National Hurricane Center makes improvements and additions to the forecast products that they put out to everyone and that we get and then in turn show you. And this year they've made a couple tweaks that will make the forecast cone a little more accurate. Also putting more information in one spot, because what do we all love? We love one-stop shopping. So everything we need to know about where a hurricane's going and the impacts it could provide us are now all in one map. It's a busy map, but it is the most popular map that we show probably all year long outside of a snow forecast map. And we haven't had a lot of snow lately. So
Yeah.
hurricane maps are the most popular.
Yep, absolutely. And the thing too with these forecast cones is a lot of times, even when the storm is well away from us, we can deal with tornadoes as a result of these tropical systems. Now, obviously, we know it's not quite hurricane season just yet, but we had kind of a tropical feel a few days ago. With a low pressure moving just to our west, it spawned a few tornadoes as well. One of those was very early this past Tuesday morning. Our own meteorologist Laura Smith, of course, had to be on air and track that one. And I had a chance to sit down with her and talk about what that is like from a broadcast meteorologist perspective when we have to cut in. And here's that conversation. We are now joined by meteorologist Laura Smith. Laura, the weather's been a little crazy lately. We're happy that this week is much more calm. We had rain, we had severe thunderstorms, we had a couple of tornadoes, including one that you had to wake up. I don't want to say wake up very early. You're already up early. We know that. You're a morning meteorologist. But one that you had to cover a little bit earlier than maybe you would have in a normal shift. Tell us about that.
Yeah, this was probably my third overnight tornado here in this shift. But certainly anytime we have one, we take it very seriously because, of course, those night tornadoes are the most dangerous. I relieved Wes in that active weather pattern we had last week. We knew we had some spin in some of those storms. I mean, we had that warning over in Edgecombe County on Monday night. So I relieved him at 2. And then, of course, by 3:25, we had a tornado warning. And that was issued for the Edgecombe County area. And it was interesting to watch. We had a warning start over in the New Bern area, eastern North Carolina. Next thing you know, by 3:25, tornado warning goes out from the National Weather Service. And then, of course, we had a confirmed tornado radar indicated from our debris tracker. And so, of course, we sent the crew, and this is what she found damage, luckily no injuries, but it was an active one. That tornado in the Pine Tops area, which is the one that was confirmed on radar, happened around 3:45, Rachel.
Yeah, and so you'd already been on air by this point by about 20 minutes talking about a tornado warning. And when you're talking about a tornado warning, you're kind of just going through all of the products. You're tracking it. How fast is it moving? Where is it going? And then you eventually see something like this. And we've got it here on the video. That is what Laura was talking about, our debris tracker. The technical term is correlation coefficient. And basically, if you see something like that sort of pink, magenta, red color, that's rain. The radar sees that as rain. But when it sees something that's not raindrop shaped, the radar says, hey, this is not what I think it's supposed to be. And it paints it this color, normally sort of this green or yellow. A lot of times it can even be a dark blue. And that indicates the debris. So as you were on air, actively tracking this tornado warning at 3:30 in the morning, and then you see this come down at 3:45. What's going through your head in that moment?
As meteorologists, we see that stands out. It's the outlier of that picture. We're saying, oh no, that's not good. Let's hope for no injuries. We're just going to continue to name out those the area, those streets. You can see here with Doppler winds around that time, it really wasn't. Nothing really stood out as much as it did, I thought, earlier in that warning when it was first issued near Fountain, where I saw rotation right over 258. We later find that was, in fact, a tornado as well as it moved towards McClellisville. But that Pine Tops location is the one, that tornado was the one that where we had the radar and then the debris confirm that tornado. And yeah, it's something we never want to see. Luckily, this area doesn't have a whole lot of people living in that area, but we heard from the mayor when our team got there. You can see the damage they found. She said they have a warning system, Rachel, on the ground. So that helps them, of course, when it comes to these warnings and try to get as many alerts out there as they can.
And the National Weather Service does such a great job with issuing these warnings with as much time as possible in advance, so that way the warning alerts on the phones can go off or the community alerts can be sent out to the community, so that way people can have that advance warning. They can get to that safe space because, you and I as meteorologists, I feel like we kind of know the stats and we know how dangerous and how tornadoes spin up, but North Carolina doesn't always deal with a crazy amount of tornadoes. So if you're not in practice with it, you get that warning. Oh my gosh, what do I do? And especially when it comes to nighttime tornadoes, no matter where you are across the country, they are the most deadly, the most dangerous.
And you got to think, this is a rotating system with winds over 100 miles per hour. regular thunderstorm with winds up to, a severe thunderstorm up to 60 miles per hour can do just as much damage too, bringing down trees, knocking out power. Trees falling on homes kill so many people across our country every single day with these storms. And so when we saw this debris tracker at 3:45, it was definitely concerning. Of course, it did weaken, and thankfully that warning was able to expire. Nighttime tornadoes, very dangerous. It's even worse, Rachel, when people try to go see them, because here in North Carolina, they're more times than not rain wrapped.
And we have our beautiful trees around here too, and that doesn't necessarily give you a great view. Everyone wants to see it. Everyone wants to get the social media posts and all of that. We get it. It's okay to be curious. Again, we're meteorologists. We think this stuff is really cool in sort of a strange way, but we also realize the seriousness of it. And social media is a great tool, but it can also lead to some dangerous situations, shall we say. Yeah. So the main thing is we just want to make sure everyone is safe whenever.
Edgecombe County was on edge. I mean, this entire period, 12 hours, 3 EF1 tornadoes through Edgecombe County last week between the 12th and the 13th. I mean, why us? Why us? Well, our far eastern, it's not just choosing you. I can tell you that much. These storms can just spin, and they can happen anywhere. But there is a little more spin sometimes from those inland storms pushing on shore. And as they track to the north and west, like tropical systems, they spin around that upper level low. They typically have a little better spin up in the upper atmosphere, and sometimes they can come to the ground.
And this had a very tropical feel to it. We had to track tornadoes during what was left of Tropical Debbie, what was left of Hurricane Helene. We had a lot of tornadoes as a result of that this fall. And this had that feel where we had that just little bit of spin in the atmosphere. And it didn't necessarily look impressive on velocity, but then you get that, what we see on the radar, all of a sudden it drops that. So yeah, it had that tropical.
And we talked about this earlier, Rachel, but radar indicated doesn't always mean that we have a confirmed tornado, of course, but we get a lot of them because it doesn't take a whole lot for those to spin down to the surface. Doesn't mean they're on the ground, but they can spin up and spin down quickly.
And that's why every tornado warning has to be taken seriously. Most tornado warnings are just going to be a warning. We see that this could possibly happen, and thankfully nothing does. But you don't want to treat every tornado warning as if a tornado is not going to happen, because just like in this instance, it was brief. It wasn't on the ground for very long. But look at the damage it did from the short amount of time that this tornado was on the ground.
I mean, look at the trees.
Exactly. Those were not small trees. I mean, look at that. Those are large trees.
And a car damage.
And like we always mention, it doesn't matter where it impacts, whether it's a highly populated area or somewhere that's a little more rural like Pine Tops. If you have a tree that falls on your home or your home, that is an impact, and it impacts you. Sometimes we get into this, say, all about me. If it's not impacting me, I don't care. Even an EF1 is strong enough to do this significant damage. We'll have to clean up.
Yeah, and 80% of these tornadoes, across the country, happen between about noon and midnight. So they can happen at any time. And the most dangerous one, like we mentioned, are overnight. So you want to make sure you have those alerts. But like we mentioned earlier too, Rachel, March to June, most active time period here in North Carolina when it comes to tornado development, May in particular. And we kind of have a secondary spike normally around September, which is when we get the leftover tropical stuff as well. But yeah, this time of year, and especially like we were talking about sort of the eastern part of central North Carolina, it's kind of that perfect blend of warm, moist air coming in from the Atlantic. We get that spin with these systems. Like I said, even if it's brief, it can cause some damage. Yeah, absolutely. That's why you should always take severe thunderstorm warnings seriously. The Storm Prediction Center really helps us out, outlining those areas, marginal, slight, enhanced risk. It's very rare that we get those level 3 risks, but even a marginal can produce tornadoes. And so, of course, I think we were in a marginal during this system.
Yeah. So, we always try and guide you into what to expect, you know, whether it's even just a brief tornado or anything like that. But if these warnings are issued, we of course are going to hop on the air and keep you updated. Laura, thank you so much for joining us. Again, if you don't watch Laura, you should. Meteorologist Laura Smith in our morning show. If you don't want to wake up early enough to watch the morning show, by the way, you can watch it here on CBS 17 Plus, so you always have a chance to watch the morning show. But hey, CBS 17 at noon, now the #1 noon-rated newscast in Central North Carolina. So
getting right over
catch
here.
Laura. So catch Laura and everyone else on the morning show.
Thanks,
Laura,
Rachel.
thanks so much for coming in.
I don't get to see Laura unless there is bad weather or unless there is free food at the station.
This is true.
We
This
were
is true.
completely opposite shifts, but you know, that tornado she was talking about, one of 3 that hit Edgecombe County in less than 24 hours, and it happened in the middle of the night, 3:30 a.m. 27% of tornadoes across the country happen at night, but they account for 2.5 times more deaths. So that's kind of obvious. People are asleep. Maybe they don't have a way to get alerts, and they're causing problems. You can't see anything. Just an interesting statistic and a scary situation, whether it's night or day.
Yeah, absolutely. But of course, CBS 17 Storm Team is here to walk you through it no matter what. But we want you to stay tuned because we've got a few more interesting tidbits coming up. We're going to stop talking about tornadoes and hurricanes, but we're going to talk about birds and alligators, both on the move right now. Kind of interesting facts, and that's coming up after the break.
On the radar with the CBS 17 Storm Team.
Welcome back to On the Radar, along with Rachel Duensing. I'm Wes Hohenstein. Let's put our meteorology knowledge aside for a second and talk zoology. Did you take a zoology class in college? I took a lot of random classes, but
I don't think I did.
I didn't either.
But I kind of wish as an adult and like looking back on, of course, you always look back on hindsight with 2020. I'm like, I kind of wish I did because that would have been really interesting.
Yeah, so it's that time of year, it's spring, when animals are on the move.
Yep.
Birds and alligators all coming and moving around North Carolina. Interesting time of year. Our friends over at Birdcast put out several forecasts a day of how many birds are flying through a certain area at any given time at night. And this happens a lot because springtime, all the birds that flew south for the winter are returning to the north. And, you know, this is an example of their birdcast, their estimates in early May.
Yeah,
and
this
they
is May
estimate
7th.
nearly 400 million birds were flying south to north on the night of May 7th. This was one of the peak nights, and through central North Carolina, that number could exceed 1 or 2 million. So imagine that. We all go to sleep, the birds are awake, and they're flying north. Millions of them literally through central North Carolina. Now, as we look at the next map that kind of advances to where we are in late May, much fewer. By late May, most of the birds are already to the north. But just some incredible numbers to think about, that there are that many birds, number one, and that there are that many birds flying back north, a lot of them through central North Carolina. And there's something that we can do to help them get to their final destination safely.
Yeah, that is, and we do a big initiative around that here, Lights Out for Wake, but really you just need to turn out any of those lights, especially around windows at night. Now, a lot of people, you know, they have the really pretty lighting all over their homes, and experts do say that if you want to still keep that lighting, instead of uplighting, have it be downward facing, because it's not going to disorient them as much. They're not going to fly into it and get confused. So as long as that light is pointing down, birds should have no issues. They also make some stickers now. They're like UV stickers that you can put on your windows, and you don't really notice them, but the birds see them. And so they see, okay, that's a window, or, you know I shouldn't fly directly into that, because they're not getting confused by the reflection of anything. And so they're like, okay, I see this little UV sticker, whatever it is, and they avoid that. So that way we don't have as many bird deaths or injuries flying into tall buildings or even into a residential home because they are confused and dazed from all of the lights at night. Because again, big part of their migration is, of course, traveling at night.
Yeah, so if you own a home or a business and you can shut off your lights this time of year, you'll help birds get safely to where they want to be. And you're thinking to yourself, well, why do I care about birds? Well, here's a selfish reason. Birds eat a lot of insects. And yes, they are pretty, and I'm to a point in my life where I watch a lot of birds.
Yeah.
I'm that old, but birds eat a lot of the insects that we dislike in the summer. So let's help take care of them and see if we can dim our lights. I don't know how I feel about this next zoology story.
Yeah.
It's another migration story, and it's about tracking alligators over time into North Carolina. So our friends at the North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission have been tracking alligators, and we now have an idea of where alligators can be found in North Carolina. So obviously, the farther south you go, the more alligators you're going to find along the coast. Sure, that makes sense. But I do not like these trends, Rachel. And
No,
you used to
not at
live
all.
in Florida, so you used to deal with this a lot more. Look how the green, where we can find alligators, has crept into Cumberland County and Sampson County. And I don't even want to think of what's going to happen over the next 10 to 20 years as things continue to warm in our state.
Yeah, and a lot of it is too, they're obviously going up the rivers as well, especially when you get into like Cumberland County, going right up Cape Fear. And a big part of the reason they're on the move, of course, it's their mating season, so they're trying to get out and about, find their mate, and all of that. So
Tell me more about how that works.
No, again, I took no zoology classes, so I
Okay.
have no idea. But yeah, so
The next episode.
no. So if you're traveling to the coast, or even if you live in Cumberland or Sampson County, like near the river areas, river edges, maybe keep an eye out.
Yeah,
for
and
that.
a lot of people ask, we talk about how our climate warms, and people ask, well, how does that impact me? And we talked about many specific reasons that it impacts North Carolina. Here's another one. If we keep getting warmer, alligators are going to feel comfortable going farther and farther north. And Wake County, do you want an alligator walking down Glenwood Avenue, or do you want an alligator in Jordan Lake? I mean, I don't.
No.
But that's just one of the side effects of what our changing climate is going to do and what alligators have done in North Carolina.
Yeah. So another thing, not migration reasons, but a long time ago, something else happened. Something else kind of went on the move, trying to eventually get to the moon. And it made history. And that was Alan Shepard being the first person from the United States technically getting into space. So we want to show you some of that video, and as we always like to do, we're going to talk over that a little bit as well.
Yeah, so this happened on May 5th, 1961. Alan Shepard, he was in the U.S. Navy. He was the first United States astronaut to go into space when he rode on a Project Mercury capsule. He went a little more than 100 miles up into space and then came back to Earth safely. The capsule he was in was dubbed Freedom 7. It weighed over 2,000 pounds, and it launched like many of our spacecraft do in the United States from Cape Canaveral, and that was just the start of the space race that happened more than 60 years ago, around this time on May 5th, 1961.
And it's always cool just seeing these little bits of history as well. He was not the first man in space. A Russian cosmonaut was able to sort of take that title, but it's still just really cool to see these little bits of history. And obviously Alan Shepard, again, just an amazing part of history, and just one step closer to when we're able to finally put men on the moon.
Yep, it's going to happen in the next couple of years. Hey, let's wrap up today's episode with our usual segment, Super Sunsets. We're going to zoom all over the world. Let's start with our old buddy Justin. He used to be a director here at CBS 17. He now lives back in Tennessee.
Aw,
but
Justin,
he
love him.
knows I like super sunsets, so he sent me this one from Watauga Lake in Tennessee. So thanks to Justin. Let's go to Key West, Florida. Elizabeth Curse captured this super sunset down in Key West, Florida. That looks good. Let's come back home to Smithfield out in Johnston County.
Love that
Dana
one.
always sends me some great pictures. This is a super sunset. And I'll finish with this one. This is from my old buddy Mike Roebuck. My very first job in Lafayette, Louisiana. I was weekend meteorologist. Mike was the sports director. Great guy. He's now retired and goes all kinds of places that I'd like to go. He captured this super sunset down in Key West, Florida. That's the 7 Mile Bridge. So thanks to Mike and all the viewers who send great pictures. If you've got one, I try to show them every night at 11 o'clock. Just send me an email to sendit@cbs17.com. And that is it for today's episode, meteorology and zoology of On the Radar here on CBS 17 Plus.
And some astronomy history thrown in there
Yes.
as well, because why not? As always, we are so grateful you spent a little bit of time with us, seeing what's on our radar, hopefully is now on your radar as well. For Wes, I'm Rachel Duensing, and we hope you have a wonderful day.